My son didn't shout. He didn't argue. His voice was calm, almost shaking. "Don't come home for Christmas," he said. 2 days later, I noticed the same black sedan parked across the street. It never moved. And then I found a note inside the house, one I knew my son didn't write. That's when I realized this wasn't about family anymore. It was about survival. If you're ready to uncover why my own son was terrified, subscribe now, because this story only gets darker from here. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if your child warned you not to come home for Christmas? I never thought a phone call could feel like a door slamming shut, but that's exactly how it hit me when my son, Daniel, said the words, "Dad, don't come for Christmas this year." The line went quiet after that, like he was waiting for me to argue, to push back, to remind him of the tradition we'd kept for 23 years straight. Every December, no matter how messy life got, I'd drive up to his place in Vermont. Snow on the windshield, coffee in the cup holder, a trunk full of gifts wrapped in paper that never quite matched. It was our thing, our anchor. But this time, his voice carried something I couldn't place: hesitation, maybe guilt. And I froze. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to demand an explanation. But instead, I just sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, staring at the blinking Christmas lights I'd strung across my living room window. They looked ridiculous suddenly, like decorations for a party no one was coming to. "All right," I finally said, my voice sounding older than I remembered. "If that's what you want." He sighed, almost relieved. "Thanks, Dad. I'll call you soon." And then he hung up. The silence afterward was heavier than any snowfall I'd ever driven through. I stood in my living room, surrounded by boxes of ornaments, the smell of cinnamon candles, and a tree that suddenly felt like a stranger in my house. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe he was busy. Maybe work had him tied up. Maybe he just wanted space. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Because Daniel wasn't the type to break tradition. He wasn't the type to push me away. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat in the dark, replaying his tone over and over. There was something in it, something he wasn't saying. And the worst part? My mind started filling in the blanks. Was he sick? Was he hiding something? Was there someone else in his life he didn't want me to meet? The questions clawed at me, each one sharper than the last. By the next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Not just holiday stress wrong. Not just busy schedule wrong. Something deeper. Something that made my chest tighten every time I thought about it. I told myself I'd respect his wishes. I told myself I wouldn't drive up there. But as the hours passed, the idea of staying home felt unbearable. And then, 2 days later, everything changed. What happened next didn't just answer my questions, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my son. The second morning after Daniel's call, I woke up with that gnawing ache in my chest, the kind that doesn't let you breathe right. I tried distracting myself, made coffee, flipped through the news, even turned on one of those cheesy holiday movies. But every scene of families laughing around a tree felt like a cruel reminder. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. Respecting his wishes suddenly felt less like honoring his independence and more like abandoning him. My gut screamed that something was off, and I've learned the hard way in life. Ignoring your gut usually costs you more than listening to it. So I packed a bag. Just a few clothes, nothing fancy. Tossed the wrapped gifts into the trunk, the ones I'd planned to hand him with my usual dad jokes about bad wrapping skills. And then I hit the road. The drive north was brutal. Snow had started falling, thick and heavy, turning the highway into a blur of white. My wipers fought to keep up, but my mind was louder than the storm. Why didn't he want me there? Was he ashamed of something? Or was he in trouble? Every mile marker felt like a countdown to an answer I wasn't sure I wanted. I thought back to when he was a kid, how he used to beg me to put up the lights earlier than the neighbors, how he'd sneak downstairs at 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve just to shake the boxes under the tree. That boy had grown into a man who now told me not to come. The closer I got to Vermont, the heavier the silence in the car became. No music, no radio. Just the sound of tires crunching against ice and my own pulse hammering in my ears. By the time I pulled into his town, the streets were eerily quiet. Christmas decorations glowed in windows, but there was no warmth in them for me. I parked outside his house, my hands gripping the steering wheel like I was bracing for impact. The curtains were drawn. No lights inside. No sign of him. I sat there for a long minute, debating whether to knock, whether to call, whether to just drive away and pretend I hadn't come. But then I noticed something. something that made my stomach drop. His car wasn't in the driveway, and Daniel never went anywhere without it. That missing car was the first crack in the story, and what I found next would split it wide open. I stepped out of the car, the cold biting through my jacket, and stared at Daniel's house. It wasn't just quiet, it was too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you second-guess whether you're supposed to be there at all. Snow crunched under my boots as I walked up the driveway, scanning for any sign of life. No footprints, no tire tracks, just untouched snow, like the place had been abandoned for days. I knocked on the door. Once, twice, nothing. My hand hovered over the knob, and for a split second, I thought about trying it. But I stopped myself. Breaking into my own son's house wasn't exactly the Christmas memory I wanted to create. Instead, I circled around back. The porch light was off, the grill covered in snow, and the sliding glass door locked tight. But that's when I noticed something strange. Through the gap in the curtains, I could see the living room. The tree was up, decorated, glowing faintly in the dark. So he had prepared for Christmas. He hadn't canceled it entirely. That realization twisted my stomach. If he'd gone through the trouble of setting up the tree, why would he tell me not to come? I pulled out my phone, dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. Daniel, it's me. I'm outside your place. Call me back. My voice cracked at the end, and I hated how desperate it sounded. I stood there in the freezing air, waiting, hoping for headlights to appear at the end of the street. But nothing came. Then I noticed something else. On the porch, tucked against the wall, was a package. The cardboard was soaked from the snow, the label smudged, but I could still make out the delivery date. 2 days ago, which meant he hadn't been home since at least then. My chest tightened. Where the hell was he? I picked up the package, brushing off the snow, and for a moment I thought about opening it. Maybe it held a clue. Maybe it would explain why he'd vanished. But I stopped myself, because deep down, I knew the real answers weren't inside a box. They were inside that house. And I had to decide, was I going to wait for him to come back? Or was I going to cross a line I'd never crossed before? The choice I made in that moment would uncover something I was never meant to see. I stood there on Daniel's porch, the package still in my hands, the cold biting through my gloves. My breath fogged the glass of the sliding door as I leaned closer, staring at the faint glow of the Christmas tree inside. It was beautiful, perfectly decorated, but it felt wrong, like a stage set waiting for actors who never showed. That's when the thought hit me. What if he's in trouble right now? I tried calling again, straight to voicemail. My chest tightened, and I felt the weight of a decision pressing down on me. Respect his privacy or break into my own son's house. I chose the latter. The front door was locked, but I knew Daniel's habits. He always kept a spare key under the third flower pot by the steps. I crouched down, brushed away the snow, and there it was, cold metal against my fingers. Sliding the key into the lock felt like crossing a boundary I couldn't uncross. The door creaked open, and the smell hit me first. Not rot, not decay, something subtler. Stale air, like the house hadn't been lived in for days. Inside, everything looked normal at first glance. The tree sparkled, stockings hung neatly, gifts stacked underneath. But the silence was suffocating. No music, no laughter, no sign of life. I called out, "Daniel?" My voice echoed back at me, hollow. I walked through the living room, my eyes scanning for clues. His jacket was draped over the couch. His boots sat by the door. His phone charger was plugged into the wall. So why wasn't he here? I moved into the kitchen. A coffee mug sat in the sink, half-rinsed. A plate with crumbs still on it. It looked like he'd left in a hurry. Then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. On the counter, next to the fridge, was a folded piece of paper. My name written on the front. I froze. My hands shook as I reached for it, the paper crinkling under my grip. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at my name, written in his handwriting, wondering what kind of message a son leaves for his father when he tells him not to come for Christmas. Finally, I unfolded it. The words inside were short, barely a sentence, but they changed everything. What Daniel wrote in that note wasn't just a warning. It was a confession. 44444444444444444444. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper, the silence of the house pressing in like a weight. Daniel's handwriting was sharp, hurried, almost frantic. It read, "Dad, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't stop you. Please don't look for me. I'm fine, but I can't let you be part of this." That was it. No signature, No explanation. Just those words. I stared at the note until the letters blurred. My son, my only son, had left me a message that sounded more like a warning than reassurance. Don't look for me. The phrase echoed in my head, twisting tighter with every repetition. I sat down at the kitchen table, the paper still in my hand, and tried to breathe. But the questions came faster than the air. What couldn't he stop me from? What was this? Why would he think I couldn't be part of it? I thought back to the last time I saw him, Thanksgiving. He'd been quieter than usual, distracted. I'd chalked it up to work stress, maybe a relationship issue he didn't want to talk about. But now, sitting in his empty house with that note in front of me, I realized it was something bigger. I stood up, pacing the kitchen, scanning for more clues. His laptop wasn't on the counter where it usually sat. His phone wasn't here either. But his wallet was, half buried under a stack of unopened mail. Who leaves without their wallet? The unease in my chest grew heavier. I picked up the mail, flipping through envelopes, bills, junk flyers. Nothing unusual. But then I noticed one envelope with no return address, postmarked just 3 days ago. It was already torn open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No words, no message. Just a printed photo. A photo of Daniel, standing in front of a building I didn't recognize. His expression wasn't casual. It was tense, almost fearful. And behind him, blurred but unmistakable, was a man watching him. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about Christmas. This wasn't just about family. Something else was happening. Something Daniel didn't want me tangled in. But now I was tangled anyway. That photo wasn't just a clue. It was the first glimpse into a world my son had been hiding from me. I couldn't stop staring at that photo. Daniel's face wasn't just tense. It was haunted. His shoulders hunched like he was bracing for something. And that man in the background blurred, but unmistakably watching him. I set the photo down, my pulse hammering in my ears. The note said, "Don't look for me." But how could I not? Every fiber of me screamed that my son was in danger. I walked through the house again, slower this time, searching for anything I'd missed. His bedroom was neat, too neat. Bed made, closet doors slightly open. Inside, clothes hung in perfect order, but the suitcase that usually sat on the top shelf was gone. So he'd packed. He'd left intentionally. But where? I sat on the edge of his bed, gripping the photo, and memories started flooding back. Daniel as a kid, hiding under the covers after nightmares, whispering that he was scared of the man in the hallway. I used to laugh it off, tell him it was just shadows. But now, staring at this picture, I wondered if those childhood fears had grown into something real. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through my recent calls. No new messages. No updates. Just silence. Then I noticed something odd. The envelope the photo came in had faint smudges on the corner. Ink, maybe. Or fingerprints. I held it up to the light, and that's when I saw it. A faint stamp, barely visible, from a shipping center 2 towns over. My heart kicked up. It wasn't much, but it was a lead. I stuffed the photo and the note into my jacket pocket, grabbed my keys, and headed back out into the freezing night. The snow had thickened, the streetlights casting long shadows across the empty road. As I slid into my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was watching me now, like the man in the photo wasn't just watching Daniel, but me too. I started the engine, the headlights cutting through the storm, and whispered to myself, "Hang on, son. I'm coming." But what I found at that shipping center wasn't just a clue. It was proof that Daniel's world was far darker than I ever imagined. The drive to the shipping center was brutal. Snow hammered the windshield, the wipers barely keeping up, and every mile felt heavier than the last. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, gripping like I was holding on to more than just control of the car. When I finally pulled into the lot, the place looked deserted. A squat brick building with a flickering neon sign that read Parcel Depot. The parking lot was empty except for one rusted pickup truck, its bed piled with snow. Inside, the air smelled of cardboard and dust. A single clerk sat behind the counter, scrolling on his phone, barely glancing up when I walked in. "Evening," I said, trying to sound casual. "Got a question about a package." He shrugged, uninterested. "Depends. You got a tracking number." I slid the envelope across the counter. "This came through here, right?" He picked it up, squinting at the faint stamp. His expression shifted, just slightly, but enough for me to catch it. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Came through 2 nights ago. No return address. Guy dropped it off late. Didn't stick around." My pulse quickened. "What guy?" The clerk hesitated, then leaned back in his chair. Tall, dark coat. Didn't say much. Just paid cash and left. I pressed. Did he leave anything else? A name? A receipt? The clerk shook his head. Nope. Just the envelope. I felt the frustration rising. But then he added, almost as an afterthought. Funny thing, though. He asked if we had overnight shipping to Burlington. Said he needed it there fast. Burlington. Daniel City. My chest tightened. Whoever this man was, he wasn't just sending random photos. He was close. Too close. I thanked the clerk and stepped back into the freezing night, the neon sign buzzing above me. My breath fogged in the air as I tried to piece it together. Daniel had vanished. A stranger had mailed me a photo of him. And now I had a location, Burlington. But as I turned toward my car, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Across the street, parked under a broken streetlight, was a black sedan. Engine running. Headlights off. And I swear, I saw someone inside, watching me. That car wasn't just waiting, it was following. And I was about to find out why. I froze on the steps of the shipping center, my breath clouding in the icy air. That black sedan across the street wasn't just parked, it was anchored. Engine humming, headlights off, like it was waiting for me to notice. I tried to play it cool, walking toward my car without rushing, but every step felt like a spotlight was on my back. My hand gripped the keys so tight they dug into my palm. Sliding into the driver's seat, I started the engine. The sedan's brake lights flickered. I pulled out slowly, turning onto the main road. In the rearview mirror, the sedan rolled forward, matching my pace. My chest tightened. This wasn't paranoia. They were following me. I tested it, took a left down a side street, then another. The sedan stayed behind. 2 cars back, never too close, never too far. Memories of Daniel's note clawed at me. Don't look for me. Was this what he meant? That if I dug too deep, someone would come after me too? I gripped the wheel, my mind racing. Should I confront them? Pull over? Or keep driving and hope they got bored? But then I noticed something. The sedan wasn't just following. It was hurting me. Every time I tried to change direction, it adjusted, nudging me back toward the highway. And that's when the realization hit me. They didn't want me lost. They wanted me somewhere specific. I pressed harder on the gas, snow spraying behind me, trying to break free. But the sedan accelerated too, closing the gap. My pulse hammered as I swerved onto a narrow road, tires skidding on ice. The sedan followed, relentless. Finally, I spotted a gas station up ahead, its lights glowing like a beacon in the storm. I pulled in fast, parked near the entrance, and jumped out before the sedan could box me in. The clerk inside looked up, startled, as I pushed through the door. I turned back just in time to see the sedan slow, pause at the edge of the lot, and then drive away. Gone. But the message was clear. They knew where I was. They wanted me to know they were watching. And when I finally discovered who was inside that car, I realized Daniel's secret wasn't just dangerous, it was deadly. The gas station clerk gave me a strange look as I lingered by the counter, pretending to browse snacks I didn't want. My eyes kept darting to the window, waiting for that black sedan to circle back. It didn't. But the silence outside felt heavier than before, like the storm itself was holding its breath. I grabbed a coffee just to have something in my hands, then stepped back out into the cold. The lot was empty now, the snow swallowing any trace of tire tracks. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined it all. Then I saw him. Across the street, half hidden under the awning of a closed hardware store, a man stood watching me. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat. His face was shadowed, but I could feel his eyes locked on me. My pulse spiked. I forced myself to walk calmly to my car, but every step felt like a dare. I slid inside, started the engine, and glanced back toward the awning. He was gone. Just gone. I gripped the wheel, my mind racing. Was that the same man from the photo? The one standing behind Daniel? If it was, then this wasn't coincidence. He wasn't just watching my son, he was watching me too. I drove off, the coffee untouched, my thoughts spiraling. Daniel's note, the photo, the sedan, the man in the shadows, it all pointed to something bigger than I could piece together. And then, as I turned onto the highway, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A voice, low and steady, filled the line. You should have stayed home, Mr. Carter. My blood ran cold. Before I could respond, the line went dead. That call wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. And the next time my phone rang, it would change everything. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the motel walls, Every gust of wind rattling the window felt like someone was outside waiting. My phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, but I kept staring at it like it was a loaded weapon. Around 3 a.m., it lit up. Unknown number again. My hand hovered, heart pounding, before I swiped to answer. This time, the voice wasn't steady. It was urgent, almost panicked. "Dad, it's me. Daniel." I sat up so fast the bed groaned under me. "Daniel? Where are you? What's going on?" His breathing was ragged, like he was running. "I don't have long. You shouldn't have come looking. They know you're here now." My throat tightened. "Who's they?" "Daniel, talk to me." Silence. Then, softer, "I didn't want you dragged into this. I thought if I kept you away, you'd be safe." But now his voice cracked. "Now it's too late." I pressed the phone harder against my ear, desperate. "Son, listen to me. Whatever this is, we'll figure it out together. Just tell me where you are." He hesitated, and in that pause I heard something. Footsteps, voices muffled in the background. Then Daniel whispered, "Burlington, by the old train yard." "But Dad, don't come alone." The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, the silence roaring louder than his words. Burlington, the train yard. A warning not to come alone. My son was in danger. And now, so was I? What waited for me at that train yard wasn't just Daniel. It was the truth he'd been hiding all along. The old Burlington train yard looked like something out of a forgotten movie set. Rusted tracks half buried in snow, warehouses with broken windows, and silence so thick it pressed against my ears. My headlights cut across the emptiness, revealing nothing but shadows. I parked near the edge, heart pounding, and stepped out into the freezing air. Every crunch of my boots echoed too loud, like the place itself was warning me to turn back. Daniel had told me to come here, but not alone. And yet, here I was, alone, clutching the note in my pocket like it was a lifeline. I moved deeper into the yard, scanning for movement. That's when I saw it. A flicker of light inside one of the warehouses. Just a faint glow, like a lantern or a phone screen. I pushed the door open, the hinges groaning, and stepped inside. The air smelled of rust and damp wood. My breath fogged in the cold, and then I heard it. Footsteps. "Dad." His voice. I turned, and there he was. Daniel, standing in the shadows, thinner than I remembered, his face pale and drawn. Relief surged through me, but it was short-lived. Because behind him, half hidden in the dark, stood two men. Strangers. Watching. Silent. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't have come." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "You called me. You told me where to find you." He shook his head, glancing back at the men. "I had to. They made me." The words hit me like a punch. Made him. The men stepped closer, their presence heavy, their silence louder than any threat. One of them finally spoke, his voice low and deliberate. "Mr. Carter, your son owes us. And now, so do you." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about Christmas. This wasn't about family. It was about debt, secrets, and danger I couldn't yet see the edges of. And when Daniel finally told me what he owed them, I realized the price wasn't money. It was something far worse. The warehouse air felt colder than the snow outside. Daniel stood between me and those two men, his shoulders tense, his eyes darting like a trapped animal. One of the men stepped forward, his boots echoing against the concrete. "Your son owes us," he repeated, his tone sharp, final. I swallowed hard. "Owes you what? Money? I'll pay it. Whatever it is, I'll fix it." Daniel shook his head quickly, almost violently. "No, Dad. It's not money." His voice cracked, and the words that followed cut deeper than any blade. "It's information." My stomach dropped. The man smirked. "Smart kid. Got access to things he shouldn't. Files. Names. Places. He thought he could walk away. But once you're in, you don't walk away." I turned to Daniel, my voice trembling. "What did you do?" His eyes brimmed with guilt. "I thought I was helping. At work, I found things, illegal shipments, people being moved. I thought if I exposed it, I could stop it. But they found out. They came for me." The second man stepped closer, his presence heavy. "And now, Mr. Carter, you're part of it too. He brought you in the moment you showed up." The weight of it crushed me. My son hadn't just been hiding from me. He'd been protecting me. And now, standing in that warehouse, I realized I was no longer just a father looking for answers. I was a liability. Daniel's voice broke through the tension, desperate. Dad, I didn't want this for you. I told you not to come because once they know your face, you're marked. And now, he glanced at the men, his jaw tight. Now they'll never let you go. The silence that followed was unbearable. My heart pounded, my mind racing. But one truth cut through the noise. I couldn't leave him. Not now. Not ever. I stepped forward, placing myself between Daniel and the men. My voice was steady, even as fear clawed at me. If you want him, you'll have to go through me. The men exchanged a look, their smirks fading into something colder. And in that moment, I knew Christmas wasn't canceled. It had become a battlefield. What happened next would decide not just our holiday, but whether either of us lived to see another one.